Growing up as a movie fan, I was always intrigued, and I'm still mega intrigued to this day, about the concept of a crossover. What would happen if this character from this movie went up and fought that guy from that film? It's something that's not always easy to put across on a film, but it's something that I feel thrives in the form of a comic book. So what I want to do today is talk about one of my favourite comic book crossovers of all time. Back in 1995, when for one summer, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre took place right on Friday the 13th. In Topps Comics, Jason vs. Leatherface. Throughout all of my teens and my 20s, I was really into horror characters. Pinhead from Hellraiser, Ash Williams from Evil Dead, Michael Myers, Leatherface, Jason, Freddy Krueger. I collected a shit ton of VHS, and I was also really into the comics. Pretty much every major horror character had their own comic publication at some point, and growing up, I went out of my way to try and subscribe to as many as I could get hold of. I was also so into this concept of horror characters crossing over and fighting in comic book form that years before you could see Freddy vs. Jason on the big screen, you could find me at home, age 13, drawing my own Freddy vs. Jason comic. Now, as I said, as I got a bit older, I started to subscribe to as many horror character comics as possible, but there were lots of them that were before my time that weren't available anymore, and back before eBay, the only way that you could get hold of old back issues was either at a comic fair or going round independent comic shops and rummaging through their back issue boxes. Now, doing this over the years, I came across lots of gems, but one set that I could never seem to track down was this set, Jason vs. Leatherface. This is a set that came out in 1995, and ever since I first saw it in the early days of Google, I was completely mesmerised by it. The concepts, the covers, everything. Trying to find this set though for a decent price was like pulling fucking teeth, and it wouldn't be until recently that I finally got hold of a set. So what I want to do in this series is sit down and take a look at what has now become probably my favourite comic of all time, Jason vs. Leatherface, starting with issue 1. These were released by Topps Comics, and I love that it says suggested for demented readers, instantly letting us know what we're in for with this story. Years ago, before you could go on YouTube and Google and search any of the panel art from inside this comic, the only thing that we had to go on was these covers. And I can honestly say that, hand on heart, I truly believe this is the greatest comic cover ever. It might be my favourite piece of art ever. And I could just be biased because these covers were all painted by Simon Bisley, and he's one of my favourite artists of all time. But looking at that cover of Jason and Leatherface locking horns, muscles looking like they're about to fucking explode, it doesn't get any better than that. This looks like the greatest VHS cover that never was. It's the perfect mix of nightmarish and comic book. The way it's painted makes them look like they're stood in the middle of a swamp. There's dead bodies and skulls and rib cages fused within the twisted trees around them. Everything looks like it's on steroids. Even the trees look like they'd rip your fucking head off. He's done a redesign on Jason's mask that makes him look like Rick from Splatterhouse. His blade is a different shape to what it normally looks like. Leatherface looks like a demon with these white eyes. He's got no lips and he's screaming. It looks like they're both fighting in the middle of hell. It's a complete redesign. He's completely done his own thing with it, and nothing inside the comic looks like it does on this cover, but it just fucking works. I think this is awesome, and as a standalone piece of art, I just can't get enough of it. So if we take a look inside the book, the first thing we see on the left hand side is all the credits of the writer and the artists, all the people that made this thing possible. And the first panel that we see starts us off in Crystal Lake, and it says, "Once, not so long ago, Crystal Lake was a place where people came to enjoy summer's ideal, to enjoy nature's beauty and maybe to fall in love. But that was before Jason. Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake." And we get this dope image of Jason's hockey mask formed from shadows within the mist and the clouds that hang over the lake. And it says, "Now Jason's evil. His undying hatred of those who live and love hangs over the lake and the surrounding countryside. The laughter of campers enjoying summer's pleasures is gone forever, to be replaced by things more in keeping with its tainted heritage." And we see we've got this factory that looks like it's pumping out a load of toxic pollution into the fucking lake, and we know that because there's a dead fish right there in the bottom corner. Also, I don't know why anybody in the right mind would pour toxic chemicals into fucking Crystal Lake. A lake that's usually got a killer chained to the bottom of it that cannot be killed and is constantly getting resurrected. Now, I don't know when this takes place in the timeline of Friday the 13th. Those movies, continuity is pretty fucking messed up. Jason gets tied to the bottom of the lake in part 6, in part 7, and then in part 8, Jason takes Manhattan. He gets flushed out into the sewage system, and I always was kind of under the impression that he probably somehow made his way back to Crystal Lake and he got chained to the bottom again, because in this comic he looks like he does in Jason Goes to Hell, which came out 3 years before this comic. So this kind of takes place in its own timeline. It says he's trapped. He's been trapped here for how long? Weeks? Months? Decades? He has no way of knowing. Nor does he care. Time means nothing to him. All that matters is vengeance. They're out there. He can feel them. They're out there in the light while he remains hidden, condemned to the shadows. His name and deeds spoken of in whispers if mentioned at all. And he knows this would still be true, even if he had not drowned in that very lake 20 years before. They must be punished, all of them. All of those who dare to live and love and dare to be happy when he can never know these things. He must be patient. He has had to wait before. Time is meaningless to one who is such as he. And after all, he has his hate to keep him warm. And we get this fucking sick full-page drawing of Jason chained to the bottom of Crystal Lake with the title of this book, Going South. So after that cool little prologue and Jason introduction, we're introduced to the dudes that are pumping the toxic into Crystal Lake. These fucking bigwig suited up corporation fucks. We find out that they've had a report from the environmental agency telling them that they can't dump chemicals into the lake anymore, which means that that location to them is now useless. So they're going to drain the lake, dreg the bottom, which means scrape out all the shit from the bottom of the lake, and then in its place, build a business centre there. Proper evil corporation shit. Destroy a ton of wildlife and then build a big fucking tower there. We skip forward, it's night time, they've already started dredging the lake and they confirm that it is toxic waste that they've been pumping into the water. And you've got this old dude that runs up on them like, "You fools, all of you, you'll wake him up!" It's a real Friday the 13th kind of trope to have our old guy warning people to stay away from Crystal Lake, like, "You are all doomed!" And this old fella's just there telling them, "Yo, stay away from the lake. There's a killer chained to the bottom of it. Stay away, don't go dredging it." But obviously they don't listen and Jason gets caught up in the net. His body gets scooped up in a load of shit from the bottom of the lake, dumped in a big skip, and then put on the back of a freight train. And this is actually a really good way to get Jason out of the lake and into a different location. Now, these big American freight trains, they're known for travelling really slow, and it's a really well-known trope for people to hitch rides on them, and that's exactly what happens here. This homeless-looking dude jumps aboard with his little dog, and he's not hurting anybody, he's just sat there chilling, minding his own business, when all of a sudden, bang, bang, crang! We see Jason's broken out of the containment unit that he was trapped in, and I love how he's got his machete across his chest like a fucking ninja. And this guy's just playing his harmonica for his dog. He's not hurting anybody. Proper wholesome. But then he notices something out the corner of his eye, and we see that Jason's dropped into his carriage, piss wet through, silhouetted with stench lines coming off his shoulders. And I feel really sorry for this old dude because he's genuinely nice to Jason. He introduces himself, he even offers him a drink, and Jason's just like, "Fuck off!" and lobs his fucking hand off at the wrist. And this dude is just fully confused. He has no idea why this guy is attacking him. And he's like, "Why did you do it? Why?" Watching! Thunk! Whoosh! Jason just takes this guy's head clean the fuck off and it bounces off the side of the carriage. And if that weren't brutal enough, then just check how harsh this next bit is. And this does come with a warning for animal lovers. You've got the dog that's there just trying to protect its owner. He locks onto Jason's ankle and Jason just whoop, cleaves the little innocent puppet clean in half. And this is fucking bullshit. I don't care how angry Jason is. I don't care if he's been dragged around in a bunch of polluted sediment all night and he's piss wet through and he's pissed off. You don't be killing animals. Especially cute, innocent little puppies that are just trying to protect their owners. I love Jason. Jason's my guy. But this part of the comic is bullshit. Then we cut to the train driver and the other dudes in the locomotive of the train, and they're just sat there playing cards, shooting the shit like guys do, when Crung! Jason just kicks the door clean off the hinges. I love when Jason boots stuff. One of my favourite Friday the 13th moments ever is in Jason Takes Manhattan, when he walks up to the punk kids and just volleys their boombox across the street. Living in the city ain't no big deal.
If the crack don't get you, then the hookers will.
I fucking love it so much. These guys try to fight Jason, but it's pretty redundant trying to fight him with anything, never mind bare fists. This dude breaks a billy bat over the back of his head, but it just pisses off Jason even more, and that's why, shunk, he cops for the machete in the centre of his skull. Jason then eliminates the driver with a mandible claw that throws him across the room, and it causes the train to derail. Scrank, wham, crank, wham, bam, kaboom! The artwork on this explosion is fucking awesome. Explosions are not easy to draw, and this guy nailed it. I also love how Jason is just this agent of chaos. He doesn't try and slow the train down and nicely step off it. He just derails it and lets it explode around him, and he walks off like nothing's happened. So now we cut to Jason alone with his machete walking through a forest, and he walks past a sign that says, "Howdy, welcome to Sawyerville." Now, anybody that's seen Texas Chainsaw, the original 1974 Texas Chainsaw, knows that Sawyer is the surname of the Texas Chainsaw family, which means that Jason has travelled all the way from New Jersey and the train derailed in Texas, and he is now in Texas Chainsaw territory. We also know this because there's a dude running through the woods screaming for his fucking life. He's proper panting and running like, "God, please don't let them find me. Please, Jesus, if you just let me live, I'll do whatever you want me to." And this guy, whoever he's running away from, ends up running directly into Jason fucking Voorhees, and he drops to the floor and he's pleading, and Jason raises his machete because he's gonna do what he does best, when all of a sudden, ooh-wee, dog will hunt. Looky what we got here, Bubba, another ingredient. This guy runs up behind him, the dude that's been chasing him, and he shouts, "Leatherface, you bitch! Where the hell are you, boy? I said we got ourselves some more meat on the hoof!" And then, accompanied by the sound of chainsaw revving, vrum, 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 we see the big man himself, the first reveal of Leatherface, chainsaw and all. I proper love the inking and the colour on the bottom of this page, it's so punk. We've got the vibrant pinks and yellows and greens and blues, and then we've got the first ever time that Jason and Leatherface face off and clash, and it's fucking awesome. The artwork on these pages is fucking beautiful. It's such a perfect way to tell this story. You've got these two gigantic dudes staring each other down, locking heads, chainsaw still revving, vrum, vrum, vrum. Sprang! Jason manages to do some cheeky little wrist maneuver and he knocks the chainsaw out of Leatherface's hand. So Leatherface is now disarmed. Jason raises his machete, and just when you think he's going to take a swing at Leatherface, something crazy happens. He turns his attention to the victim. Splock! Cuts his head clean in half, and then rather than attack Leatherface, he reaches down, lifts up his chainsaw and hands it to him. So at this point, we're just like, yo, what the fuck is going on? Why is Jason not attacking Leatherface? This dude throws his arm around Jason and introduces himself as Hitchhiker. As in Hitchhiker from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But for some reason, he looks really different in this. I don't know if it was a rights issue to likenesses and whatnot, but this guy's got a swastika tattooed on his face, which is an obvious ref to Charles Manson. He's got this crazy wiry hair. He doesn't look like the Hitchhiker from the film, but this is the Hitchhiker that we get for this comic. So in some weird turn of fate, Jason decides not to kill the Hitchhiker and Leatherface. And it says here, he could have killed them both, but he didn't. Why? The emotions that fill Jason's head right now are alien to him, as they are not hate or anger. He is uncertain how he should act. Jason decides he shall bide his time. Perhaps he will kill them eventually, kill these strangers. After all, he's killed everybody else he ever met. Hitchhiker invites Jason for dinner, and the unlikely trio take a walk back to the Texas Chainsaw house. Now, I like how they've tried to at least explain this to us. They're saying, look, this is weird for Jason. He doesn't normally act like this. However, in this story, this is how it's going down. It's also interesting to know that the Sawyer family and the characters from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were doing their thing in the 70s, and at the end of that original movie, Hitchhiker dies. This is a comic that came out in 1995, so timeline-wise, this doesn't make sense, and it's something else that makes us realise this takes place in its own universe. This is something that's completely its own thing. So, the unlikely trio all pile back to the Sawyer residence, and this is when we're introduced to Cook. Now, this looks nothing like Jim Sadow that we know from Texas Chainsaw 1 and 2, but again, this is the version that we're getting in the comic. Hitchhiker then introduces Jason as his new friend. He's brought him back for dinner and that he's one of us. He tells Cook that Jason's the guy that took this victim down. He's the one that cut his head in half. He's like, Leatherface, is this true? It sure is. You should have seen it, Cook. He took that chainsaw away just like taking candy from a big old baby. And it proper pisses Leatherface off. He throws the fucking headless corpse at Hitchhiker and storms upstairs having a tantrum. I love how Leatherface is like a big fucking child. This shows us that Leatherface gets jealous of Jason, and he also sets up the conflict between Leatherface and Hitchhiker, which will play out later on in the story. Also, talking about the artwork again, I love how this headless corpse has just got his tongue flapping at the top of his head. It's fucking macabre. So Jason leaves Cook and Hitchhiker downstairs arguing, and he makes his way upstairs, and we get a little bit more exposition as to what's going on inside his brain. The confusion churning inside Jason's breast is still there at first. He thought the emotions he was experiencing were new and alien to him, but now he realises that they're not strange at all, just forgotten. They are emotions that belong to another time, another place, another Jason. And we see this flashback panel of Jason as a child. Jason can hear blubbering and sniffing, so he makes his way across the corridor, pokes his head round a door to see Leatherface laid in bed crying. We can see that Leatherface doesn't have his mask on. There's also some cool little Easter eggs in this bedroom. He's got a Frankenstein poster, he's got a Frankenstein doll and a Wolfman doll, a cool lampshade made out of a skull and bone, and then on his wall he's got a Frazetta Conan poster. Now when Leatherface sees that Jason's in his bedroom, he panics and grabs his mask and pulls it over his face. He doesn't want anybody to see him without his mask on. But Jason can kind of relate to this, and rather than attack him again, Jason stands to one side and lets Leatherface walk past and downstairs so that they can both go and have dinner together. And that's the craziest thing about this comic. People will have bought it expecting to see Jason and Leatherface fight for 3 issues. We're not even at the end of issue 1, and these guys have already made friends, buddied up, and are now boys. So the two make their way downstairs into the kitchen, and we see that Cook's doing a big family feast. He's putting a big spread on, and he also makes a comment to Jason. He says, I can't tell you how happy I am to see you and Leatherface hitting it off. I can tell by looking at you that y'all have, lots in common. So they're all getting ready to sit down and eat dinner. Cook's made steak, Hitchhiker's made Kool-Aid, they're chilling. They introduce Jason to their dead aunt Amelia. We know from the Texas Chainsaw movies that this family keep relatives around long after they've passed away. It's just one of the many fucked up weird things that this family are into, and I love how she's got a cup with Barney the dinosaur on it. Jason then gets to meet the legendary Sawyer family grandpa, who as always looks about 300 years old. And then Cook asks Jason, I've introduced you to everybody, do you have a name? And in what I think is a real genius way of explaining it, Jason puts his hand in the chili and remembers back to when he was a little kid writing his name on a chalkboard, and he uses the chili to write Jason on the wall. So in what is like a really weird, wholesome scene, we see Jason get accepted into the Sawyer family. So there we have it, the first issue of Jason vs. Leatherface, and this is not at all the story that we expect when we hear that title, Jason vs. Leatherface. They've definitely taken some artistic licensing with the way that they're making Jason think and act and the redesign of the characters, but I think it really works. I remember when I first heard about this comic when I was a little kid, and I heard that they get on and that they're friends in it, and I was a bit torn. I didn't really know how I felt about that, because obviously you just want to see them fight. But the way they've done this story and explained why Jason is acting this way and why he's thinking these thoughts with the flashbacks and giving him the background and the history, all I like is a bit of explanation. Just let me know what world we're in, what the rules are, and then I'm good with that. So this is a perfect way to tell this story. It's also nice to have Jason, Leatherface and the Sawyer family at the forefront of the story and not a bunch of victims and teenagers running around and a story that we don't care about. We came here for Jason and Leatherface, and this is what we're getting. We've got the victims, we've got the kills, we've got the gory, crazy ways that people die, but we're not focusing on that. The focus of this story is Jason and Leatherface. This format and the way that the comic's drawn, that's slightly cartoony, but it's dark, and it's macabre, but it's colourful. It's the perfect way to tell this Jason vs. Leatherface story, and I hope you're excited for the next episode where we take a look at part 2. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to give it a like, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd also like to hear what was your favourite part of this comic. So in the comments below, let me know. Also let me know if there's any other comic book crossovers that you think I should be covering, and let me know what's your favourite comic. Let's chop it up in the comments below and get some comic book conversation popping. You can also get at me on Instagram at Theo_Kane_Slimehouse. I try and post lots of exclusive content on there every single day. And if you want to be a slime renegade and help make Slimehouse bigger and better than ever, for just $1 a month, you can head over to patreon.com/SlimehouseTV and become a slime renegade. Also, we've got lots of cool exclusive t-shirts coming out every single month for the rest of the year. So head over to slimehousestore.com and see which ones pop in this month. They're always exclusive. They run for 1 month, pre-order only, then it ends. You'll never get that t-shirt again. So head over to slimehousestore.com and see if there's anything you fancy. With all that being said, I'm going to catch you in the next video. My name's Theo Kane. Pow!